So this video will show you how you can code and score an oral reading passage. So this is just a sample, and we'll be discussing the points about coding and scoring as we go along. So what you will need are the recording forms for the students' text that they're reading, and the coding and scoring at a glance pages. So the coding and scoring at a glance pages are found in the assessment forms book in the resource section. And as you begin this journey with Benchmark, you may find that you need to have these pages handy, but as you will find that you will get quite skilled at the coding for the assessments, and you may not need to use these once you've done a handful of assessments. So how we are going to do this, so we'll learn together to code and score. So I'm going to act as a student and read the text in sections. We'll pause then and identify the errors in each section and give them the coding. And we will then look to see what the score is for each of those errors. Some errors will be a score of 1 and others will have a score of 0. And then when the assessment is totally complete with the student, you will do an analysis of the errors and self-corrections, but we'll do it as we go along in this practice session. So here's the first part from the recording form, and each student will have one of these recording forms for every text they read. So I'm going to read first as pretending I'm the student. Sam wanted a cat more than anything in the world. He wanted a cat that would sleep on his bed and purr in his ear and be his best friend. So if we look at the coding that's done here, the check mark will indicate accurate reading, and there are no errors associated with this coding. If the student is reading very quickly, you do not need to use the check mark. You can just eliminate that part of the coding. In the first line, you'll see that the student substituted the name Sam for Spencer, and that is considered an error. And the first time that the student uses the incorrect name through this text is counted as an error, but if they go through the whole passage and calling him Sam, you don't count that as a secondary error. And then the last line, another substitution error. So from was used instead of furry, so it is scored as an error of 1. So this is where you will be using the text. So you will use the columns for error and self-correction to tally this up. Normally you would continue on with the assessment. I'll just take a moment to pause here. So at the end, you will then determine if that error is for meaning, structure, or visual information. So what is the cause of that error as an analysis? Or if there's a self-correction, is it associated to meaning, structure, or visual information? Please, can I get a cat? Please, can I get a cat? Sam, is that his name? Spencer. Spencer asked, I real want one. Are you some? What's that word? Sure. His mother, you try it, and answered. It is hard to work, to took cat of a cat. So in this case, there are many things to code. In the first line, the student reread the entire sentence, and so it was marked by having that arrow and the R. This is not considered an error if you reread the text. So the student substituted Sam for Spencer again, and then he asked for the name, and the teacher tells. So that is considered one error. Substitution for real instead of really. Substitutions were attempted, appealed for an answer, then told, counts as an error. And that substitution, appeal, told, and 1 error recorded again. For the insertion, the student added the word to the text, and that counts as an error. And you'll note that there will be no need to code this for meaning, structure, or for visual information because a word was added in. And took cat 2 substitutions in that line. So tallying the subtotal up from this page 2 and 3 of the student text, you'll see that there will be a tally at the end, so you can record those up. Continuing on, I'll take good care of him, said Spencer. What's that word? Promise. I'll bus him and feed him and give him water each day. All right, said his mother. Let's go to Apple Tree Farm. Maybe we can get a cat there. Okay, so the first in line 2, the student appealed and the teacher told for the word promise, so scores is 1 error. Bus was substituted for brush, an error. Each for every, substitution, 1 error. And the student substituted, said the word from for farm and then self-corrected. So then that does not count as an error because they self-corrected it, so you would score the self-correction. Spencer and his mother went to Apple Tree Farm. Many animals lived on the farm. There were cows and horses in the farm. There was a friendly farmer, and there were cats everywhere. Spencer had nowhere so many cats and kittens. How will you crush just one? Asked Spencer's mom. Spencer there about it. He said, I'll trust the best cat for me. So continuing to score this text or code this text, you'll write the words students are reading to you above the words that they should be reading in the text. So in that first line, there were 2 substitutions made, nowhere instead of never seen. So it counts as 2 errors. Couche instead of choose, substitution, 1 error. There for thought, substitution, error 1. Trust for choose, and substitution, error equals 1. So if we think about the error analysis of this, looking at meaning, structure, and visual information, sometimes an error is just a visual information error, and sometimes it's a combination of meaning, structure, and visual information. Spencer saw a black cat playing on the straw in the barn. I like your shiny ruff, said Spencer. Will you be my cat? So 1 substitution here, ruff for fur. The cat jumped, ducked under the straw. I guess you're not the best cat for me, said Spencer. I'll look for another cat. So repeated the word and then made the self-correction. So 0 error and scored a self-correction. Spencer watched another cat licking her paws down by the pond. I like your fluffy tail and your pink tongue, said Spencer. Will you be my cat? The cat didn't even look at Spencer. I can tell that you are not the best cat for me, Spencer said. I'll look for another cat. So in this section, there was accurate reading throughout the text, so no errors are reported. So as you were doing the assessment, you had pages and you had subtotals along the bottom of each page for errors showing. And then this is the place where you will tally all of those errors together to indicate how many errors, how many self-corrections, and then when you go back and do the analysis of the errors, you'll be able to tally the meaning, structure, and visual information errors and self-corrections. After tallying each error and self-correction on the recording form, look at the number and kinds of errors and self-correction the child has made. For both the errors and the self-corrections, you're going to hypothesize and record the sources of information that the reader used when he made the error, determining if the child used meaning, language structure, or visual information. Alternatively, you can place a check mark in the column instead of writing M, S, and V. Meaning. Readers often make substitutions that indicate they are thinking about the meaning of the text. For example, a reader might say jump for hop. Ask yourself, did the meaning of the text influence the error? Does the substitution make sense? If so, circle the M in the sources of information column under error. Structure. A powerful source of information for a reader is the structure of language. From our knowledge of oral language, we have implicit knowledge of the way words are put together to form phrases and sentences. It sounds right to us. Readers often substitute nouns for nouns or verbs for verbs, indicating an awareness of structure of language. For example, a reader might say, "We like going" for "we like to write." Ask yourself, does the error fit an acceptable English language structure up to the point of error? Did structure influence the error? If so, circle the S in the sources of information column under error. Visual information. Readers use the visual features of print, the letters and words, to read. They connect these features to phonetic information that exists in their heads. For example, looking at the picture, a reader might say park for play. Ask yourself, did the visual information from the print influence the error? Letter, part, word. If so, circle V in the error column. Readers often use multiple sources of information as they process text. You might code this as both S, he substituted one verb for another, and M, going and ride, because mean ways to get somewhere. Both mean ways to get somewhere. In another example, a reader might substitute steps for stairs, indicating attention to all three: meaning, structure, and visual information. Here you would circle M, S, and V in the sources of information column. If there is more text to read, the student would go off and read the text independently. You would then take your time to score the oral reading assessment. We'll determine the accuracy rate. For this student, they had 19 errors in the text. So circling on the table, we can see that they have an accuracy rate of 93%. Determine the self-correction error. So counting up the self-corrections and relating that to the error to give us that ratio. And then determine the fluency score using the rubric. After that, you will move on to the comprehension conversation. For more information about the oral reading assessment, refer to Section 2, Administering, Coding, and Scoring, and Section 3, Summarizing, Analyzing, and Interpreting Results in the assessment guidebooks. Following the collection of videos on oral reading assessment, you may wish to then view the comprehension conversation videos and the scoring and analysis at a glance videos.